Baby Saw, a German Shepherd. Crying at a bus stop bench, what he did next left everyone in tears. What happened that rainy morning at a simple bus stop would change dozens of lives forever, and the story you're about to hear will absolutely shock you. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The rain had been falling for 3 straight days in the city, turning everything gray and washing the streets until they shine like mirrors. 5-year-old Marcus pressed his small nose against the cold glass of the bus shelter, watching the last drops fall from the metal roof. His grandfather Henry stood beside him, checking his old watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. The number 42 bus was late again, which meant they might miss Marcus's appointment at the children's clinic. "Grandpa, listen," Marcus suddenly said, his voice dropping to a whisper. The boy's head tilted to one side, his brown eyes growing wide with concern. "Do you hear that?" Henry pulled his attention away from the empty street and looked down at his grandson. At 68, his hearing wasn't what it used to be, especially after 30 years of teaching in noisy classrooms. "Just the rain dripping, buddy." The bus should be here any minute now. But Marcus was already moving, his small red raincoat making a swishing sound as he walked to the end of the bus shelter. He crouched down, peering under the wooden bench that ran along the back wall. What he saw there made him gasp so loudly that Henry immediately rushed over. Under the bench, pressed as far back as possible into the corner, was a German Shepherd. The dog was soaking wet despite being under shelter, suggesting it had been out in the rain for a long time before finding this spot. Its fur was matted and dirty, and even from where Henry stood, he could see the animal was trembling. But what struck both of them most was the sound coming from the dog, a low, heartbroken whimpering that sounded almost exactly like crying. "Oh my goodness," Henry breathed, his hand instinctively reaching out to pull Marcus back. "Stay away from it, Marcus." The dog might be sick or dangerous, but Marcus didn't move back. Instead, he got down on his hands and knees, his face level with the dog's. "He's not dangerous, Grandpa. He's just really, really sad. Look at his eyes." Henry reluctantly bent down, his knees protesting with sharp pains. The dog's eyes were indeed something to see, large, brown, and filled with such profound sadness that Henry felt his heart squeeze in his chest. The animal wasn't showing any signs of aggression, no bared teeth, no growling, just that continuous quiet crying that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. "There's a collar," Marcus pointed out, reaching his small hand slowly toward the dog. Henry grabbed his wrist gently but firmly. "Don't touch him yet. Let me look first." Henry squinted at the worn leather collar around the dog's neck. There was a small metal tag hanging from it, tarnished and scratched. He could barely make out the name etched into it, R-E-X. "His name is Rex," Marcus said, though Henry hadn't spoken the name aloud yet. The boy had a way of knowing things sometimes that Henry couldn't explain. His daughter, Marcus's mother, had been the same way before the car accident took her 2 years ago. It was one of the reasons Henry had taken custody of Marcus. The boy needed someone who understood his sensitive nature. Rex's whimpering grew slightly louder, and the dog shifted position, revealing something that made Henry's stomach turn. The dog's left hind leg had a nasty cut, not fresh but not properly healed either. It looked infected, with angry red edges and some discharge. No wonder the poor animal was crying. "We have to help him," Marcus said, his voice firm with the kind of determination that reminded Henry so much of his late daughter. "We can't just leave him here." Henry sighed, looking at his watch again. The bus would arrive any moment, and Marcus's appointment was important. He'd been having nightmares since his mother's death, and the child psychologist had been helping. But looking at his grandson's face, then at the suffering animal, Henry knew they weren't getting on that bus. "The bus is coming," he said gently. "We need to go to your appointment." Marcus's eyes filled with tears that he tried to blink away. "But Grandpa, he's all alone. He's hurt and scared, and he keeps looking down the street like he's waiting for someone who isn't coming back." The boy's voice cracked on the last words. "Just like I used to wait for Mommy." The words hit Henry like a physical blow. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering those first terrible weeks after the accident when Marcus would sit by the window for hours, watching for his mother's car. The parallel wasn't lost on him. The familiar rumble of the bus engine made them both look up. The number 42 was pulling up to the stop, its brakes hissing as it came to a halt. The doors opened with a pneumatic wheeze, and the driver, a middle-aged man named Carl, whom Henry recognized from their regular rides, looked out at them with a friendly smile that quickly turned to concern. "Morning, Henry." "Morning, Marcus. You folks coming aboard? You're getting wet out there." Henry stood up, his decision made. "Not today, Carl. We've got a situation here." Carl put the bus in park and stepped out, pulling his rain jacket tighter. He was a stocky man, with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. "What's going on?" Marcus pointed under the bench. "There's a hurt dog. His name is Rex, and he's crying." Carl's expression changed immediately when he saw the German shepherd. His face went from curious to deeply worried in the span of a second. "Oh no, not this dog again." "You know this dog?" Henry asked, surprised. Carl nodded grimly. "He's been showing up at this stop every morning for about 2 weeks. Now, always sits under that bench, always crying like that. I've tried to call animal control twice, but he runs off before they get here. Then he's back the next morning, same spot, same time." 2 weeks? Marcus asked, his voice small. "He's been sad for 2 weeks?" "Afraid so, little man, and that's not the worst part." Carl looked around nervously, then lowered his voice. "Yesterday there were some rough-looking men here asking about a German shepherd. They had a photo, looked a lot like this fellow. They seemed real angry, kept talking about valuable property and teaching someone a lesson." Henry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "Did you tell them anything?" "Course not. Didn't like the look of them one bit. But they said they'd be back today with more people to search the area." Carl glanced at his watch. "I need to keep to my schedule, but maybe you should get that dog out of here before those men come back." Marcus had been listening to the adults talk, but his attention was really on Rex. While they spoke, he'd slowly extended his hand toward the dog, palm up, fingers relaxed. Rex had stopped whimpering and was sniffing his hand cautiously. "It's okay," Marcus whispered. "I won't hurt you." "I know what it's like to be scared and alone." To Henry's amazement, Rex's tail gave the tiniest wag, just once, barely noticeable, but it was there. The dog slowly, painfully, crawled forward just enough to lick Marcus's fingers. The boy's face lit up with a smile that Henry hadn't seen in months. "He trusts me, Grandpa," Marcus said softly. "He says... I can tell he's been waiting for someone kind." Carl had to leave, but before he drove off, he leaned out the window one more time. "There's a vet clinic 3 blocks north, on Maple Street. Dr. Chen. She's good people, helps strays sometimes. Might be worth a visit." As the bus pulled away, Henry made a decision that would change their lives forever. "Okay, Marcus. We're going to help Rex, but we need to be careful. Can you stay calm and help me?" Marcus nodded solemnly. "I'll be his friend." That's what he needs most. Henry found an old piece of rope in his pocket. He always carried odds and ends, a habit from his teaching days. He fashioned it into a makeshift leash, moving slowly and talking in low, soothing tones as he approached Rex. The dog watched him warily, but didn't growl or show teeth. "That's a good boy, Rex," Henry said softly. "We're going to get you some help." It took several minutes of gentle coaxing, but finally Rex allowed Henry to loop the rope around his collar. When they tried to get him to stand, it became clear just how weak the dog was. His legs shook with the effort, and the infected wound on his hind leg was worse than Henry had initially thought. "He can barely walk," Henry muttered, concerned. Marcus immediately moved to Rex's side, his small hand resting gently on the dog's back. "I'll help him. We can go slow." And so they did. The 3 of them made their way down the rain-slicked sidewalk at a pace that would have been comical under different circumstances. Marcus stayed by Rex's side, whispering encouragement. Rex limped along, occasionally whimpering, but seeming to draw strength from the boy's presence. Henry led the way, keeping an eye out for any suspicious-looking men who might be searching for the dog. The veterinary clinic was a small, cheerful building, painted light blue with white trim. A sign in the window read, "Dr. Sarah Chen, DVM, all creatures welcome." A bell chimed as they pushed through the door, and the receptionist, a young woman with bright purple hair, looked up from her computer. Her professional smile immediately shifted to concern when she saw Rex. "Oh my, Let me get Dr. Chen right away." Within moments, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses emerged from the back. Dr. Sarah Chen had the kind of calm, competent presence that immediately put both people and animals at ease. She took one look at Rex and ushered them straight into an examination room. "How long has he been like this?" she asked, already pulling on latex gloves and beginning her examination. "We just found him at the bus stop," Henry explained. "But the bus driver said he's been there every morning for 2 weeks." Dr. Chen's hands moved expertly over Rex's body, checking for injuries, feeling his ribs, looking in his ears and mouth. Rex tolerated the examination, though he kept looking at Marcus as if seeking reassurance. The boy stood right by the examination table, his hand never leaving Rex's head. "He's been through trauma, doctor," Chen said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "These aren't just neglect injuries. See these scars here and here?" She pointed to marks on Rex's legs and chest that Henry hadn't noticed under the matted fur. "These are bite marks, healed but not that old. And these patterns, I've seen them before." "What patterns?" Henry asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Dr. Chen's face was grim. "Dog fighting injuries. This dog has been used as a bait dog. A dog used to train fighting dogs. They're typically chosen because they won't fight back." She continued her examination, then paused, her expression shifting to surprise. "Wait a moment." She retrieved a handheld device from a drawer and passed it over Rex's neck. It beeped, and she frowned at the display. "He's microchipped, but—" She trailed off, connecting the scanner to her computer. After a moment, she shook her head. "The chip has been tampered with. Someone tried to destroy it without removing it, probably to hide the ownership information. I can retrieve partial data, but it'll take some time." "Is he going to be okay?" Marcus asked, his voice small and worried. Dr. Chen's expression softened as she looked at the boy. "He's malnourished, and that wound on his leg is infected, but with proper treatment, he should recover. However," she paused, running, the ultrasound wand over Rex's belly. Her eyes widened. "Oh my—" "What is it?" Henry asked, alarmed. "Rex is actually a female, Doctor," Chen said slowly. "And she's pregnant. About 5 weeks along, I'd estimate." The room fell silent except for Rex's labored breathing. Henry felt his heart sink. Not only was the dog injured and traumatized, but she was also carrying puppies. The situation had just become much more complicated. "Pregnant?" Marcus said, his eyes wide with wonder. "She's going to have babies." Dr. Chen nodded. "Several, from what I can see, which explains why someone might be looking for her. Purebred German Shepherd puppies, especially from certain bloodlines, can be worth thousands of dollars each. If she was being used in a fighting ring, they'd want the puppies for the same purpose," Henry finished, feeling sick. "Dr. Chen, the bus driver mentioned some rough men were looking for a German Shepherd yesterday," Henry said. "They seemed angry, talking about valuable property." The veterinarian's face darkened. "Then we need to be very careful. These people don't give up easily when money is involved." She looked at Rex, who had laid her head on Marcus's small hand. "But first, let's focus on getting her healthy." As Dr. Chen prepared antibiotics and began cleaning Rex's wounds, Marcus made a discovery. He'd been petting Rex's neck when his fingers found something in her collar, a small piece of paper, folded many times and wedged deep beneath the leather. "Grandpa, look," he said, carefully extracting the paper. Henry unfolded it with trembling fingers. The paper was damp and torn, but the writing was still visible. It was clearly a child's handwriting, shaky and uneven. "Please help my dog. Dad is mean to her. I'm scared for her babies. Emma." Below, the message was an address, though water damage had made parts of it illegible. Henry could make out 7th Street and what might have been apartment numbers, but the rest was a blur. "Emma," Marcus said softly, looking at Rex. "Someone named Emma tried to save you." Rex's ears perked up at the name, and she let out a small whine that sounded different from her earlier cries of pain. This sounded almost like recognition, like longing. Dr. Chen looked at the note over Henry's shoulder. 7th Street, that's in Riverside District, not the best part of town. "We have to find Emma," Marcus said immediately. "She saved Rex. Maybe she needs help too." Henry wanted to argue that it wasn't their problem, that they'd done enough by bringing Rex to the vet. But looking at his grandson's determined face, seeing the way Rex responded to Emma's name, he knew they were already too involved to walk away now. "First, Rex needs treatment, Doctor," Chen said firmly. "I want to keep her here for observation, start her on antibiotics, and clean these wounds properly." "No," Marcus said suddenly, surprising everyone with his vehemence. "She can't stay here alone. She's scared. She thinks if we leave her, we won't come back. Just like Emma didn't come back." Henry was about to tell Marcus that dogs didn't think like that, but Rex chose that moment to struggle to her feet, whimpering and pressing against Marcus's side. Despite her obvious pain and exhaustion, she was clearly distressed at the thought of being separated from the boy. Dr. Chen watched this interaction with interest. "Your grandson has quite a connection with her. It's unusual to see such immediate trust from a traumatized animal. Marcus has always been special with animals," Henry said quietly. "His mother was the same way." After some discussion, they reached a compromise. Dr. Chen would provide the initial treatment and medications, but Rex could go home with them as long as they promised to bring her back for daily checkups and monitoring of the pregnancy. The vet prepared a bag of supplies, antibiotics, pain medication, special food for pregnant dogs, and wound care materials. "The puppies are at risk due to her malnourished state, Doctor," Chen warned. "She needs proper nutrition and rest, and absolutely no stress, which might be difficult if those men are really looking for her." As they prepared to leave, Henry realized they had another problem. "Marcus, we live in a small apartment. The landlord doesn't allow pets." Marcus looked up at him with eyes that were so much like his mother's it made Henry's chest ache. "Then we don't tell him. Rex needs us, Grandpa, and Emma needs us to take care of Rex until she can come back." Henry knew he should be the responsible adult, should explain why they couldn't keep a dog, especially a pregnant one, being hunted by dangerous men. But looking at Rex, who despite everything she'd been through, was gently licking Marcus's hand, and at his grandson, who'd smiled more in the last hour than in the past 2 months, Henry made a decision. "Okay, but we need to be very careful and quiet." The walk back to their apartment building was slow and cautious. Rex could only manage a few steps at a time before needing to rest, and Henry kept checking over his shoulder for any sign of the men Carl had mentioned. Marcus stayed glued to Rex's side, whispering encouragement and promises that everything would be okay. Their apartment building was an older brick structure, 5 stories with no elevator. They lived on the 3rd floor, which meant somehow getting Rex up 2 flights of stairs. It took nearly 20 minutes, with Henry supporting most of Rex's weight, while Marcus guided her and offered constant reassurance. "Almost there, Rex," Marcus kept saying. "Just a little more. You're so brave." Finally, they made it to apartment 3B. Henry fumbled with his keys, grateful that the hallway was empty. The last thing they needed was nosy Mrs. Patterson from 3C asking questions. Once inside, Rex immediately collapsed on the worn carpet, panting heavily. "Let's make her comfortable," Henry said, gathering old blankets from the closet. They created a soft bed in the corner of the living room, close to the radiator for warmth. Marcus helped Rex settle onto the blankets, and she let out a long sigh that seemed to release weeks of tension. "She feels safe," Marcus said quietly. "For the first time in a long time, she feels safe." Henry watched his grandson tend to the injured dog with such gentleness and care. Despite the complications this would bring to their already difficult life, he couldn't regret the decision. Marcus had lost so much: his mother, his home, his sense of security. If helping this dog could bring some light back into his grandson's world, then Henry would figure out how to make it work. That evening, as Marcus sat beside Rex reading one of his picture books aloud to her, Henry studied the water-damaged note again. 7th Street in Riverside. He knew the area. Rundown apartments, high crime, the kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask questions. The kind of place where dog-fighting rings could operate without much interference. "Marcus," he said carefully, "when you said Rex was showing you things, what did you mean?" Marcus looked up from his book, his expression thoughtful. "It's hard to explain, Grandpa. Sometimes when I touch her, I see pictures in my head, like memories, but not mine. I see a little girl with brown hair and big eyes. She would sneak Rex food when her dad wasn't looking. She would cry into Rex's fur at night." Henry felt a chill run down his spine. His daughter had described similar experiences when she was young. Though she'd learned not to talk about it as she got older, people didn't understand, she'd said. They thought you were making things up or seeking attention. "What else do you see?" Henry asked. Marcus's face scrunched up in concentration. A dark room that smells bad, other dogs barking and crying, men shouting and laughing, the little girl, Emma, trying to protect Rex but being pushed away. And then, he paused, his eyes filling with tears. And then Emma opening a door at night, telling Rex to run, to go far away. Emma crying and saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. Rex whined softly and licked Marcus's face, as if comforting him from the difficult visions. Henry didn't know what to make of his grandson's claims, but the detail and emotion in them seemed too real to be simple imagination. That night, after Marcus had fallen asleep on the floor next to Rex, despite Henry's attempts to get him into his bed, Henry stood by the window looking out at the city lights. They'd started the day heading to a routine appointment and ended it harboring a pregnant, injured dog who was apparently being hunted by dangerous men. And somewhere out there was a girl named Emma who had risked everything to save Rex. A movement on the street below caught his eye. A dark van was parked across from their building, engine running, but lights off. As Henry watched, two men got out and stood on the sidewalk, looking up, at the building. Even from 3 floors up, Henry could see they were scanning the windows systematically. His blood ran cold. Could they have been followed from the vet clinic? Or was this just paranoia? The men talked for a few more minutes, then got back in the van and drove away. Henry let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He looked back at Marcus and Rex, sleeping peacefully together. The boy had one arm draped over the dog, and Rex had positioned herself protectively around him. Whatever happened next, Henry knew their lives had irrevocably changed. They were part of Rex's story now, and she was part of theirs. The next morning came too quickly. Henry woke to find Marcus already up, carefully helping Rex drink water from a bowl. The dog's eyes looked brighter, though she was still obviously weak and in pain. "She's feeling a little better," Marcus announced, "but she's worried about Emma. She keeps thinking about her." Henry didn't question how Marcus knew this anymore. He'd decided to simply accept his grandson's unusual gift, just as he'd learned to accept his daughter's years ago. "We should try to find Emma," Marcus said, looking up at his grandfather with determined eyes. The note had an address. Sort of. Henry had been thinking the same thing all night, though the rational part of his brain kept telling him it was dangerous and none of their business. But looking at Rex, who despite her suffering had trusted them completely, he knew they couldn't just ignore the plea for help in that note. "After breakfast," Henry said, "and we need to be very careful. The men looking for Rex might be watching that area too." They gave Rex her morning medications, hidden in small pieces of the special food doctor Chen had provided. She ate slowly but steadily, which was encouraging. Marcus stayed by her side, talking to her in low, soothing tones about everything and nothing. His favorite books, what he learned in kindergarten before his mom died, how his grandpa made the best grilled cheese sandwiches. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Henry froze, his heart racing. Marcus looked up with wide eyes, and Rex's ears perked up, a low growl rumbling in her throat, the first aggressive sound they'd heard from her. "Mr. Wilson? It's Mrs. Rodriguez from 3D. I have something for Marcus." Henry relaxed slightly. Mrs. Rodriguez was a kind elderly woman who sometimes watched Marcus when Henry had to work late at his part-time job at the hardware store. He opened the door carefully, keeping it partially closed so she couldn't see into the apartment. "Good morning, Maria," he said, trying to sound normal. Mrs. Rodriguez, a small woman with silver hair always pulled back in a neat bun, smiled warmly. "Good morning, Henry. I was making too many cookies again and thought Marcus might like some." She held out a plate covered in plastic wrap. Then her expression shifted to concern. "Is everything all right? You look tired. Just a long night." "Marcus had some bad dreams," Henry said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. Then she leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "I wanted to tell you something strange. Yesterday evening, I saw men in the building asking questions. They had a photo of a dog, said it was valuable, and had been stolen. They seemed unpleasant. They even knocked on my door, but I didn't open it." Henry's blood ran cold. Did they say anything else? They asked if anyone new had moved in recently, or if anyone had seen a German Shepherd. I told them through the door that I hadn't seen any dogs. We don't allow pets here after all. She gave Henry a meaningful look that made him wonder if she knew more than she was letting on. Just thought you should know, in case you see anything suspicious. After she left, Henry closed the door and leaned against it. The men were already searching the building. It was only a matter of time before they figured out where Rex was. "We need to find Emma today," Marcus said quietly. He was still sitting beside Rex, who had relaxed once Mrs. Rodriguez left. "Rex is getting more worried. She can sense something bad is coming." Henry made a quick decision. "Okay, but Rex stays here where it's safe. We'll lock the door and—" "No," Marcus interrupted. "She has to come with us. Emma will be scared if she sees strangers, but if she sees Rex is safe, she'll trust us." It made sense, even though Henry hated the idea of taking Rex out when she was still so weak and the men were actively searching for her. But Marcus was right. If they found Emma, she'd need to see Rex to believe they were trying to help. They prepared carefully. Henry found an old jacket with a hood that could partially hide Rex's distinctive coloring. It looked ridiculous on the dog, but it might help from a distance. Marcus packed a bag with water, some of Rex's medicine, and the cookies Mrs. Rodriguez had brought, insisting Emma might be hungry. The journey to Riverside District took 2 bus rides. Rex couldn't manage the walk to the bus stop where they'd found her, so Henry had to carry her part of the way, grateful that the morning wasn't too crowded. On the bus, they sat in the back, Rex on the floor between their seats, hidden by their legs and bags. A few people gave them curious looks, but no one said anything. Riverside was exactly as Henry remembered, rows of rundown apartment buildings, trash-strewn lots, and the general air of neglect that came with poverty. The address on the note, what they could read of it, suggested somewhere on East 7th Street, possibly apartment 47 or 41. The last number was too water-damaged to be certain. They walked slowly down East 7th, Rex limping between them, all 3 scanning the buildings for any clue. Most of the buildings had broken number signs or no numbers at all. They'd gone about 3 blocks when Rex suddenly stopped, her ears perked forward, her whole body tense. "What is it, girl?" Marcus asked softly. Rex pulled against the makeshift leash, trying to go toward a particularly dilapidated building on their left. The front door was propped open with a brick, and graffiti covered most of the lower walls. But Rex was insistent, whining and pulling harder despite her injuries. "She recognizes this place," Marcus said with certainty. "This is where she lived." They approached cautiously. The building seemed mostly empty. Several windows were boarded up, and there was no sound from inside. The mailboxes in the entry were mostly broken, names faded or missing entirely. But on one, barely visible, Henry could make out E. Reeves, 4. "4th floor," Henry muttered, not relishing the idea of climbing more stairs with Rex. But Rex was already moving, pulling them toward the stairwell with surprising strength for an injured, pregnant dog. She knew exactly where she was going. The stairs were dirty and dark, littered with trash and smelling of mold and worse things. On the 2nd floor, they heard voices from one of the apartments, an argument, loud and aggressive. Henry hurried Marcus and Rex past. The 4th floor was quieter, eerily so. There were only 4 apartments on this level, and 3 had notices taped to their doors. Eviction warnings from the look of them. The 4th door, apartment 4B, was different. It had multiple locks, all broken, and the door stood slightly ajar. Rex whined, pawing at the door. Marcus looked up at Henry with frightened eyes. "Something bad happened here." Henry pushed the door open carefully, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone home? Emma?" The apartment was a disaster. Furniture was overturned, papers scattered everywhere, and there were dark stains on the carpet that Henry didn't want to identify. It looked like there had been a violent struggle. Rex immediately went to a corner of the living room where a small pillow and blanket were arranged, clearly a child's makeshift bed. "Emma slept here," Marcus said quietly, kneeling beside Rex, with Rex next to her to keep her warm. Henry searched the apartment quickly but carefully. In what must have been the main bedroom, he found evidence of the dog-fighting operation, bedding slips, photos of various dogs with prices written on them, and, disturbingly, a notebook with training schedules that made his stomach turn. The methods described were cruel beyond belief. In the kitchen, he found something else, a child's backpack hidden behind the refrigerator. Inside were a few pieces of clothing, some crackers and juice boxes, and a photo. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 or 8, with long brown hair and huge dark eyes, hugging Rex. Both looked younger, happier. On the back, in the same childish handwriting from the note, it said, "Me and Rex before everything got bad." "Grandpa!" Marcus called urgently from the living room. Henry rushed back to find Marcus standing by the window, pointing down at the street. The same dark van from last. Night was pulling up to the building. 3 men got out, including one who walked with a kind of swagger that suggested he was in charge. "We need to leave, now," Henry said, grabbing the backpack. But as they reached the apartment door, they heard footsteps on the stairs, multiple sets coming up fast. They were trapped. "The fire escape," Henry said, spotting the window at the end of the hall. It was painted shut, but desperation gave him strength. He grabbed a piece of broken furniture and smashed the window, clearing the glass as best he could. "Out quickly," he said, helping Marcus through first, then struggling to get Rex through. The dog cried in pain as her injured leg scraped against the window frame, but she didn't resist. They were on the rusty fire escape when they heard the men enter the apartment. Angry voices erupted immediately. "The dog was here. Recently. I can smell it. Find them! They can't have gone far." Henry, Marcus, and Rex descended the fire escape as quickly as they could, Rex practically falling down some sections, Henry catching her as best he could. They reached the alley behind the building just as they heard someone shout from above. "There! Fire escape! Run!" Henry said, though Rex could barely walk, let alone run. He scooped the dog into his arms, grateful she wasn't any bigger, and they rushed down the alley. They turned a corner and nearly collided with someone, a small figure in an oversized hoodie who let out a squeak of surprise. The hood fell back, revealing a young girl with brown hair and huge frightened eyes. The girl from the photo. "Rex!" she gasped, seeing the dog in Henry's arms. "Rex!" "Emma!" Marcus said at the same time. The girl's eyes filled with tears. "You found her! You saved her! I thought they killed her when she ran away." "Emma, we need to go," Henry said urgently. "Those men are right behind us." Emma's face went pale. "My dad." "He's here? Your dad?" Henry asked, but there was no time for explanations. They could hear shouting getting closer. "This way," Emma said, grabbing Marcus's hand. "I know where to hide." She led them through a maze of alleys and abandoned lots, moving with the confidence of someone who'd spent a lot of time running and hiding. Despite carrying Rex, Henry managed to keep up, adrenaline giving him strength he didn't know he had. Finally, Emma led them into an old warehouse through a hole in the wall that was hidden behind a dumpster. Inside, she'd clearly created a small living space. Cardboard laid down for a floor, some blankets, a few cans of food, and surprisingly, school books. "I've been hiding here since I let Rex go," Emma explained, her eyes never leaving the dog. "I couldn't go back. He would have killed me." "Your father?" Henry asked gently, setting Rex down on the blankets. The dog immediately tried to get to Emma, whimpering and wagging her tail despite her exhaustion. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Rex carefully. "He's not really my dad. My real parents died when I was little. Victor just took me. Said I was good at training dogs because they trusted me. Made me help with the fighting dogs." Her voice broke. "I couldn't watch anymore, especially when I found out Rex was pregnant. He was going to make her puppies fight too." Marcus sat down beside Emma and Rex, his small hand on Emma's shoulder. "It's okay now. We won't let him hurt you or Rex anymore." Henry's mind was racing. This was kidnapping, child endangerment, and who knew what else. They needed to get to the police immediately. But first, they needed to make sure they were safe. "Emma, how long have you been hiding here?" he asked. 5 days, she said quietly. "I've been going to the bus stop every morning, hoping to see Rex. I told her to go there, to wait where people could see her, where someone nice might help. I saw you yesterday with her, but I was too scared to come talk to you. Then I went back to the apartment to get my things, but Victor was already there." "You've been alone for 5 days?" Henry was horrified. This child couldn't be more than 8 years old. Emma nodded. "I'm used to being alone. Victor only paid attention to me when he needed me to work with the dogs. She looked at Rex's injured leg and infected wounds with dismay. He did this to her, didn't he? Because she wouldn't fight? She's going to be okay, Marcus said firmly. We took her to a nice doctor who gave her medicine. And her puppies are okay too. Emma's eyes widened. The puppies are still okay? Victor said. If a fighting dog got too hurt, the puppies would die too. Dr. Chen says they're developing normally, Henry assured her. But Emma, we need to contact the police. What Victor did to you, taking you, making you help with the dog fighting, it's all illegal. He needs to be stopped. Emma shrank back. No, you don't understand. Victor has friends everywhere, even some police. He always said if I tried to run, his friends would find me and bring me back, and it would be worse. Before Henry could respond, they heard voices outside the warehouse. Emma went rigid with fear, and Rex growled low in her throat. Check that warehouse. They might be hiding in there. That's Victor, Emma whispered, terrified. He found us. Henry looked around desperately. The warehouse was large but mostly empty, with few hiding spots. There was another exit on the far side, but they'd have to cross open space to reach it. Stay quiet, he whispered, pulling out his phone. He quickly texted their location to the only person he could think of who might help, Dr. Chen. Emergency, Riverside Warehouse off 7th. Men after us and the dog. Please send help. The hole they'd entered through darkened as someone looked inside. I see blankets and stuff. Someone's been living in here. Get in there and search it, Victor's voice commanded. Henry made a quick decision. Emma, take Marcus and Rex to that exit. Run as fast as you can. I'll distract them. No, Grandpa, Marcus protested. Go, Henry said firmly, standing up and walking toward the entrance, making noise to draw attention away from the children. Hey, there's someone in here, a voice shouted. Henry stepped into view, hands raised. I'm alone, just a homeless old man looking for shelter. A man climbed through the hole, followed by another. The second one was clearly Victor, tall, muscular, with cold eyes and an expensive suit that looked out of place in the warehouse. He looked at Henry with suspicion. You're no homeless man. Where's my dog? I don't know what you're talking about, Henry said, trying to buy time for the children to escape. Victor stepped closer, his presence menacing. I saw you on the security footage from the vet clinic yesterday. You had my dog, German Shepherd, pregnant, worth a lot of money. The dog I found was a stray, Henry said steadily. I took it to the vet and left it there. Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're lying. And you know what? I think you have something else of mine too. A little girl who doesn't understand that she belongs to me. The casual way he said it, like Emma was property, made Henry's blood boil. Children don't belong to anyone. They're not property. This one is. I've invested too much time and money in her training. She's the best dog trainer I've ever had. Animals trust her instantly. Do you have any idea how valuable that is in my business? Henry heard a sound from the far side of the warehouse, Marcus's voice calling out in distress. His heart sank. They hadn't made it out. Victor heard it too. Ah, there they are. He nodded to his men. Go get them, all of them. But before the men could move, there was a commotion outside, sirens getting closer fast. Then a voice through a megaphone. This is the police. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. Victor's face contorted with rage. You called the cops? Actually, I did, a new voice said from the entrance. Dr. Chen climbed through the hole, followed by several police officers. I got Henry's text and called them immediately. I also gave them the partial microchip data from Rex. It shows she was originally registered to a family that reported her stolen 2 years ago, along with their daughter Emma. Victor tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Officers were coming in from both entrances now. Within moments, he and his men were in handcuffs. Emma appeared from behind some crates, holding Marcus's hand, Rex limping beside them. When she saw Victor in handcuffs, she started crying, not from fear, but from relief. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. But the story was far from over. As the police sorted through everything, taking statements and gathering evidence, a woman officer named Detective Lisa Park knelt down to talk to Emma. Sweetheart, you've been very brave. Can you tell me your full name? Emma Chen, the girl said quietly, and Dr. Chen, who was checking Rex's wounds, gasped. Chen, That's my last name." Detective Park checked her notes. "The missing child report from 2 years ago. Emma Chen, age 6 at the time, disappeared along with the family dog from a park in Riverside. Parents were—" She looked up at Dr. Chen with shock. "David and Michael Chen, your brothers." Dr. Chen's legs gave out and she sat down hard on a crate. "My brothers died in a car accident 2 years ago. They said Emma's body was never found, that she must have been thrown from the car into the river." "There was no accident," Emma said quietly. "Uncle Victor caused it. He wanted me because of what I could do with animals. He said if I ever told anyone the truth, he'd hurt more people." The revelation stunned everyone. Dr. Chen moved slowly toward Emma, tears streaming down her face. "Emma? You're David's daughter? My niece?" Emma nodded, and suddenly she looked very young and very scared. Are you my Aunt Sarah? Daddy used to talk about you. Said you helped animals." "Yes, Doctor," Chen whispered. "Oh my God, Emma, we thought we'd lost you forever." The reunion was emotional, with hardly a dry eye among even the hardened police officers. But Marcus had a practical question. "What about Rex?" Detective Park smiled. "Well, technically, Rex belonged to Emma's parents, which means she now belongs to their next of kin. Dr. Chen, that would be you and Emma." "But Marcus saved her," Emma said quickly. "If it wasn't for him and his grandpa, Rex would have died. And so would her puppies." Dr. Chen looked at Henry and Marcus, then at Rex, who was pressed against Marcus's side despite Emma being right there. "I think Rex has already chosen her family. Emma and I would be honored if you'd help us take care of her and her puppies. Maybe a shared custody arrangement?" Marcus's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? We can keep her?" Henry wanted to point out all the practical problems, their small apartment, the no pets rule, the expense. But looking at his grandson's joy, at Emma's relief, at Rex's trusting eyes, he just nodded. The weeks that followed the warehouse rescue were a whirlwind of changes that transformed everyone's lives in ways they never could have imagined. Rex was officially placed in Henry and Marcus's care, while the legal system sorted through this complicated custody arrangements with Dr. Chen serving as the official veterinary guardian and covering all medical expenses. Emma moved in with her Aunt Sarah, but she spent every possible moment at Henry and Marcus's apartment, helping care for Rex. The landlord, Mr. Garrett, had initially threatened eviction when he discovered Rex, but Mrs. Rodriguez had organized the entire building's residents to petition on their behalf. When the local news picked up the story of Marcus and Henry's rescue of both Rex and Emma, Mr. Garrett suddenly found himself portrayed as the heartless landlord trying to throw out a hero boy and his grandfather. He quickly changed his tune, even offering to reduce their rent slightly in exchange for positive publicity about his pet-friendly building. Rex's recovery was remarkable, but not without challenges. Her physical wounds healed steadily under Dr. Chen's expert care, but the psychological trauma ran deep. She would panic at loud noises, cower when adult men approached too quickly, and had nightmares that left her whimpering and shaking. Only Marcus and Emma could calm her during these episodes, the two children taking shifts sleeping beside her, whispering reassurances that she was safe now. "She dreams about the fighting ring," Marcus told Henry one morning, his young face serious. "She sees the other dogs that got hurt, remembers the ones that didn't survive. She feels guilty for living when they didn't." Henry didn't question anymore how Marcus knew these things. He'd seen enough evidence of his grandson's gift to accept it as real, just as his daughter had possessed it before her death. It was Emma who explained it best one afternoon while they all sat in the living room, Rex sprawled between the two children. "Some people just understand animals differently," Emma said, her hand gently stroking Rex's swollen belly. "My dad, my real dad, used to say it ran in families. He had it a little bit, which is why he became a veterinarian. That's how he met Aunt Sarah at veterinary school. But I have it stronger, and Marcus has it even stronger than me." "How can you tell?" Henry asked, genuinely curious. Emma thought for a moment. "I can feel what animals feel, understand what they need. But Marcus, he actually sees their memories sometimes, like watching a movie in his head. That's really rare." Marcus nodded solemnly. "Sometimes I wish I couldn't see them. Rex's memories are really sad. Dr. Chen had been researching this phenomenon, finding scattered scientific studies about human-animal emotional bonds and enhanced empathy. She'd even connected with a professor at the university who studied what he called interspecies emotional intelligence. "It's not magic," she explained to Henry one day during Rex's checkup. "It's likely a combination of heightened mirror neuron activity, exceptional emotional intelligence, and an ability to read micro-expressions and body language that most people miss. Some people are just wired differently." Whatever the scientific explanation, the gift proved invaluable in Rex's recovery. Marcus always knew when she needed water before she whined, when she was in pain before she limped, when the puppies were particularly active and making her uncomfortable. Emma could sense her emotional state and knew exactly how to comfort her. 3 weeks after the rescue, Rex's pregnancy had progressed significantly. Her belly was round and tight, and Dr. Chen's ultrasounds showed 6 healthy puppies developing normally despite their mother's earlier malnutrition. The apartment had been transformed into a makeshift nursery, with a whelping box that Henry had built in the corner of the living room, heating pads ready, and supplies that Dr. Chen had provided. It was during this time that they received an unexpected visitor. Carl, the bus driver, who had first warned them about the men looking for Rex, stopped by one evening with a gift, a large bag of puppy supplies, and an envelope. "The other drivers and I took up a collection," he said, seeming embarrassed by their gratitude. "We heard about what happened, how you saved both the dog and the little girl. We wanted to help." Inside the envelope was $300 in small bills and a note signed by dozens of transit workers. Henry had to turn away to hide his tears. They'd been struggling financially with the added expense of Rex, even with Dr. Chen covering the medical costs, and this generosity from strangers touched him deeply. Carl had more to say, though. He shifted nervously before speaking. "There's something else? I need to tell you something about Emma." Emma, who had been sitting quietly beside Rex, looked up with apprehension. "Did you know my parents?" Carl nodded slowly. "David was my regular morning passenger for years. He'd take my bus to the veterinary hospital where he worked. Sometimes he'd bring you along during school holidays. You probably don't remember. You were very young." Emma's eyes widened with recognition. "The nice bus driver who gave me candy canes at Christmas?" Carl smiled sadly. "That was me. When I heard about the accident, about you disappearing, I never believed the official story. Your dad had mentioned his brother-in-law, Victor, a few times, always with concern. Said the man had dangerous connections, was involved in illegal gambling." "You knew Victor was bad?" Henry asked. "I suspected, but I had no proof, and who would listen to a bus driver?" Carl's face was etched with regret. "I should have said something when Emma went missing. But Victor had an alibi, witnesses saying he was elsewhere when the accident happened. I convinced myself I was wrong." "It's not your fault," Emma said quietly. "Victor was very careful. He had people lie for him all the time." Carl reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo. "I kept this. Your dad gave it to me one Christmas." The photo showed David Chen with a younger Emma and Rex as a puppy, all wearing Santa hats and smiling at the camera. "I thought you might want it." Emma took the photo with trembling hands, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't have any pictures of them. Victor destroyed everything." That night, after Carl left, Emma asked to stay over. Dr. Chen agreed, understanding her niece needed the comfort of being near Rex. The 2 children made their usual nest of blankets beside Rex's bed, with old Biscuit, Henry's ancient terrier, who'd accepted Rex with surprising grace, curled up at their feet. Around midnight, Rex began panting heavily. Marcus woke immediately, his hand going to her side. "Grandpa," he called urgently. "Something's happening." Henry hurried from his bedroom to find Rex struggling to stand, her body trembling. Emma was already awake too, her face pale with worry. "Is it the puppies?" Emma asked. Henry called Dr. Chen, who answered despite the late hour. After he described Rex's symptoms, she said she'd be there in 15 minutes. "It might be early labor," she warned. "She's not quite at full term, but the stress she's been under could trigger it. Keep her calm and comfortable." Those 15 minutes felt like hours. Rex paced restlessly, unable to get comfortable, occasionally whimpering in pain. Marcus and Emma stayed with her constantly, their young voices providing a soothing counterpoint to her distress. "You're okay, Rex," Marcus kept saying. "Your babies are coming, and we're all here to help." Dr. Chen arrived with a veterinary technician named James, and they quickly transformed the living room into a delivery room. After examining Rex, Doctor Chen's face was serious. "She's definitely in labor, about 3 weeks early. The puppies should be developed enough to survive, but they'll need extra care." She looked at the children. "This is going to be a long night. Maybe you two should try to sleep in the bedroom." "No," both children said simultaneously. "Rex needs us," Emma added firmly. "She's scared, and we help her stay calm." Dr. Chen looked at Henry, who nodded. "They can stay. They've been through so much together already." What followed was one of the longest and most intense nights of their lives. Rex's labor was difficult, complicated by her still healing injuries and overall weakened condition. The first puppy arrived just after 2 a.m., tiny and motionless. Dr. Chen worked quickly, clearing its airways and rubbing it vigorously with a towel. For terrifying moments, nothing happened. Then, a tiny squeak, and the puppy began breathing. "It's a girl, Doctor," Chen announced, placing the puppy near Rex's head so she could see and smell her baby. Rex, exhausted as she was, immediately began licking the puppy, her maternal instincts overcoming her pain. Marcus and Emma watched in wonder as the tiny creature, no bigger than Henry's hand, began moving and making small noises. "She's beautiful," Emma whispered. The second puppy came 40 minutes later, a boy who was stronger and cried immediately upon being born. Then came a long, frightening pause. Rex was clearly in distress, panting heavily, her eyes glazed with pain. "The next puppy is positioned wrong, Doctor," Chen said after another examination. "I need to try to turn it." What she did next looked painful, and Rex cried out, but she didn't snap or try to bite, as if she understood Doctor Chen was helping. Marcus held Rex's head, whispering constantly in her ear, while Emma stroked her side, tears streaming down both children's faces. Finally, the third puppy was delivered, another girl, but this one wasn't breathing. Dr. Chen worked on it frantically while everyone held their breath. Henry found himself praying for the first time since his daughter's funeral. Just when it seemed hopeless, the puppy gasped and began crying weakly. "Thank God, Doctor," Chen breathed, her professional composure cracking slightly. 3 more puppies followed over the next 4 hours, 2 boys and another girl. By the time the sun began rising, painting the apartment in soft golden light, Rex was nursing 6 tiny puppies, each one a miracle considering what their mother had endured. "They all survived," Marcus said in wonder. "All 6 of them." Rex, despite her exhaustion, looked peaceful for the first time since they'd found her. Her tail wagged weakly as she looked at her babies, then at the humans surrounding her, as if saying thank you. "What should we name them?" Emma asked. Henry smiled tiredly. "I think that's up to you two. You're the ones who saved their mother." The children took this responsibility seriously, observing each puppy's tiny personality as they grew over the following days. The firstborn girl, the smallest but fiercest, became Hope. The strong boy was named Courage. The girl who'd almost not made it was Miracle. The other 3 were named Lucky, Faith, and the last boy, who had a distinctive white mark on his chest, became Star. The puppy's early arrival meant they needed round-the-clock care. Dr. Chen taught Marcus and Emma how to supplement Rex's nursing with bottle feeding, how to stimulate the puppies to help them eliminate, how to keep them warm enough. The children threw themselves into the task with dedication that amazed the adults. A schedule developed where Emma would come over before school to help with morning feeding. Marcus would care for them during the day with Henry's help, and Emma would return after school for evening care. Dr. Chen visited daily to check on the puppy's development and Rex's recovery. The story of Rex and her puppies had spread through the neighborhood and beyond. Donations of puppy food, blankets, and supplies arrived daily. Mrs. Rodriguez organized a rotation of neighbors to help with walks once Rex was strong enough, and even grumpy Mr. Patterson from 3C was caught slipping treats under the door. But not all attention was welcome. 2 weeks after the puppies were born, Henry noticed a familiar dark van parked across from their building. His blood ran cold. Victor was in jail awaiting trial, but his associates were still out there. He immediately called Detective Park, who promised to send a patrol car. But before the police arrived, there was a knock at the door. Henry peered through the peephole to see a well-dressed woman with a briefcase. "Mr. Wilson, my name is Patricia Stern. I'm an attorney representing certain interested parties regarding the German Shepherd and her puppies." Henry didn't open the door. "What interested parties?" "My clients have a legitimate claim to those animals. They're willing to compensate you fairly for your trouble. $10,000 cash to return the dogs immediately." "They're not for sale," Henry said firmly. The woman's tone hardened. "Mr. Wilson, you should know that my clients have extensive resources and connections. It would be better for everyone if this was resolved amicably. Are you threatening me? I'm simply explaining the reality of the situation. Those dogs are valuable property that was stolen from my clients. They want them back." Henry pulled out his phone and started recording. The dogs belonged to Emma Chen and her guardian. They were stolen from Emma's family 2 years ago. Any claim your clients have is based on illegal activity. There was a pause. Then the woman said, "You're making a mistake, Mr. Wilson. My clients don't like being denied what they consider theirs." The sound of sirens made her stop. Through the peephole, Henry saw her hurry away just as a police car pulled up. Detective Park herself got out, having decided to come personally when she heard about the threat. After Henry explained what happened, Detective Park's face was grim. "Victor's operation was bigger than we thought. He had partners who were still free, and those puppies represent a significant investment to them. We're going to need to place protection on your building." "For how long?" Henry asked, exhausted by the constant threat. "Until the trial is over and we can round up all of Victor's associates." She looked at Rex nursing her puppies peacefully, unaware of the danger. "I'm sorry you're going through this. You did a brave thing, saving Rex and Emma, but brave things sometimes have consequences." That evening, they held a family meeting. Dr. Chen, Emma, Marcus, and Henry sat around the kitchen table while Rex dozed with her puppies in the living room. "Maybe we should consider relocating temporarily," Dr. Chen suggested. "I have a colleague with a farm upstate. We could all go there until things calm down." Emma's face crumpled. "We have to run away, even after Victor's in jail?" "Just for a while, sweetheart," Dr. Chen said gently. But Marcus shook his head firmly. "Rex doesn't want to run anymore. She's tired of being afraid. She wants to stay here, in her home, with her family." Henry looked at his grandson's determined face and made a decision. "Then we stay. We've already been driven from one home. I won't let it happen again. This is our neighborhood, our community. We stand our ground." Dr. Chen looked worried, but nodded. "Then we do it together. Emma and I will move in temporarily. Safety in numbers." The next few weeks took on a siege mentality. Police cars regularly patrolled the block. Neighbors organized a watch system. Carl and other bus drivers took turns parking their personal vehicles outside during their off hours, creating a protective barrier of witnesses. During this time, the puppies grew rapidly. Their eyes opened, revealing bright, curious gazes that took in the world with wonder. They began to crawl, then toddle, then play. Each developed distinct personalities that delighted the children. Hope was fearless, always the first to explore new things. Courage was protective, already trying to guard his siblings despite being only weeks old. Miracle was gentle and sweet, seeming to understand she'd been given a second chance. Lucky was playful and mischievous, always finding trouble. Faith was calm and observant, watching everything with intelligent eyes. Star was the cuddler, always seeking warmth and contact. Marcus's gift with animals became even more apparent as the puppies grew. He seemed to know what each puppy needed before they whined, could predict which ones would be hungry or need to eliminate. Emma was amazed, saying she'd never seen anything like it even with her own strong connection to animals. "You could be a famous animal trainer someday," she told Marcus one afternoon as they watched the puppies play. Marcus shook his head. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to help animals like Rex, the ones who've been hurt and need someone to understand them." It was during this conversation that they heard commotion outside. Looking out the window, they saw several news vans pulling up. Reporters and camera crews were gathering on the sidewalk. Henry's phone rang. It was Detective Park. "Victor's trial starts tomorrow. The media just got wind that the key witnesses, Rex and Emma, are staying at your apartment. I'm sorry, but this is about to become a circus." She wasn't wrong. Within hours, the street was packed with media. Everyone wanted the story of the rescued dog, the kidnapped girl, and the boy who could talk to animals. Neighbors formed a protective barrier, refusing to let reporters into the building, but the attention was overwhelming. That night, unable to sleep with the noise outside, Henry found Marcus sitting with Rex and the puppies. The boy was crying quietly, his small shoulders shaking. "What's wrong, buddy?" Henry asked, sitting beside him. "I'm scared, Grandpa. What if those bad men take Rex and the puppies? What if they hurt Emma? What if—" His voice dropped to a whisper. "What if something happens to you like it did to Mom?" Henry pulled his grandson close, feeling the boy's fear and pain. "Listen to me, Marcus. I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that we'll face whatever comes together. You, me, Emma, Doctor, Chen, Rex, and all these puppies. We're a family now, a strange one maybe, but a family. And families protect each other." Marcus nodded against his grandfather's chest. "Rex says she's not afraid anymore. She says we taught her how to be brave." "I think she taught us the same thing," Henry replied. The trial began the next morning. Emma had to testify via video link from a secure location, the prosecutors not wanting to traumatize her further by making her face Victor in court. Her testimony was powerful, describing in heartbreaking detail the abuse she'd witnessed and experienced. But the most dramatic moment came when the prosecution brought Rex into the courtroom as evidence. She was wearing a special vest identifying her as evidence, and she walked in proudly despite her still visible scars. The moment Victor saw her, he jumped up, shouting that she was his property, that he'd paid good money for her. Rex's reaction was immediate and telling. She cowered, trembling violently, trying to hide behind the prosecutor. Her terror was so obvious that several jury members gasped. It was clear this dog had been severely traumatized by this man. Marcus and Emma weren't allowed in the courtroom, but they watched from a separate room with Henry and Dr. Chen. Marcus held Emma's hand tightly as she cried, watching Rex's fear. "She's being so brave," Emma whispered. "She's terrified, but she's doing it anyway." The trial lasted 3 days. During that time, more of Victor's associates were arrested based on evidence found in his apartment and information from other dog-fighting survivors who came forward after hearing about the case. The network was extensive, crossing state lines, involving gambling, racketeering, and animal cruelty on a massive scale. On the third day, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. Victor was sentenced to 15 years in prison for kidnapping, child endangerment, animal cruelty, and running an illegal gambling operation. His remaining free associates scattered, some arrested, others disappearing entirely. "It's really over," Emma said that evening, as they all sat together in Henry's apartment. The media had finally dispersed, the neighbors had gone back to their normal routines, and for the first time in weeks, there was peace. Rex seemed to sense it too. She was playing with her puppies, actually playing, something they'd never seen her do before. She was gentle but enthusiastic, her tail wagging as the puppies climbed over her and tugged at her ears. "Not quite over, Doctor," Chen said with a smile. "We still have 6 puppies to raise and eventually find homes for." "About that," Henry said slowly, "I've been thinking. These puppies have been through trauma before they were even born. They're going to need special homes, people who understand what they've been through." Emma brightened. "Like therapy dogs. We could train them to be therapy dogs, to help other people who've been through bad things." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "They'd be perfect for that. They already understand about being scared and then learning to trust again." Dr. Chen considered this. "It's a wonderful idea, but therapy dog training is expensive and time-consuming." "I might be able to help with that," a new voice said from the doorway. They turned to see Mrs. Rodriguez standing there with a man they didn't recognize. He was tall, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This is my son, Robert," Mrs. Rodriguez said proudly. "He runs a therapy dog training program for veterans with PTSD. I've been telling him about Rex and the puppies." Robert stepped forward, offering his hand to Henry. "My mother's told me the whole story. These puppies, with their background and the clear bond they have with Marcus and Emma, could make exceptional therapy dogs. I'd be willing to train them for free if you're interested. in exchange for sharing their story to help raise awareness about our program. The opportunity seemed too good to be true. Henry looked at Marcus and Emma, who were practically vibrating with excitement, then at Rex, who was watching the stranger with cautious interest rather than fear, a huge improvement from weeks ago. "We'd need to be involved in the training," Emma said firmly. "The puppies trust us." Robert smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." In fact, having children who've experienced trauma themselves, helping train therapy dogs for others who've experienced trauma. It's a powerful narrative. Healing, helping, healing. As they discussed the details, Henry felt something shift in his chest. What had started as a desperate rescue of an injured dog had become something so much larger. They'd saved Rex, found Emma, exposed a criminal network, and now they were going to help these puppies become healers for others. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the puppies were sleeping in a pile of soft fur and tiny paws, Henry stood watching them with Marcus. "Mom would have loved this," Marcus said quietly. Henry put his hand on his grandson's shoulder. "She would have been so proud of you. You heard Rex when no one else did. You saved her." Marcus shook his head. "We all saved each other." The next morning brought a new routine. Robert arrived early to begin assessing each puppy's temperament and potential. He was impressed by how well socialized they were, despite their traumatic beginning. "You can see the difference that love and consistency have made," he told them, as he watched Hope fearlessly investigate his training bag, while Miracle gently approached his outstretched hand. "These puppies have learned that humans can be trusted, which is remarkable considering their mother's trauma." The assessment process was fascinating. Robert tested each puppy's response to sudden noises, to strangers, to being handled. Marcus and Emma translated the puppies' reactions, explaining which ones were nervous but trying to be brave, which were naturally confident, which were empathetic to distress. "Star would be perfect for working with children," Emma observed, as the puppy immediately went to comfort Faith when she squeaked during handling. "He always knows when his siblings are upset." "And Hope could work with people who need confidence," Marcus added. "She's afraid of things sometimes, but she always investigates anyway. She could show people how to be brave." Robert was amazed by the children's insights. "Have you two ever considered becoming animal behaviorists? You have natural talents that can't be taught." As the weeks passed, the puppies grew stronger and more coordinated. The apartment, already small, became a cheerful chaos of puppies learning basic commands, children laughing, and Rex watching over it all with what could only be described as maternal pride. The training sessions became community events. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her grandchildren to help socialize the puppies with different people. Carl stopped by after his shifts to help with walking practice. Even Mr. Patterson, who'd complained about the noise initially, was caught teaching Courage to sit in exchange for treats. Dr. Chen documented everything, creating a medical and behavioral record for each puppy that would follow them to their eventual therapy positions. She also monitored Rex's recovery, amazed by the dog's transformation. 6 months ago, this dog was dying in a dumpster, she said one day, watching Rex confidently walking through the neighborhood with her puppies trailing behind like a line of ducklings. Now look at her. She's not just surviving, she's thriving. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was in Emma. The scared, traumatized girl who'd been hiding in a warehouse had blossomed into a confident, articulate child who spoke passionately about animal welfare and the importance of recognizing abuse signs. With therapy and the constant support of her aunt, Marcus and Henry, she was healing. One afternoon, as they all sat in the park watching the puppies play, Emma made an announcement. "I want to tell our story," she said. "Not to reporters or for money, but to help other kids who might be in situations like I was. To let them know that there are good people who will help if they're brave enough to ask." Henry felt his chest swell with pride and concern in equal measure. "That's a big decision, Emma. Are you sure you're ready?" Emma looked at Rex, who was basking in the sun while keeping one watchful eye on her puppies. Rex was brave enough to trust again after everything she went through. "I can be brave enough to speak up." With the support of her therapist and the prosecutor's office, Emma began speaking at schools and community centers about recognizing abuse, the importance of reporting suspicious activity, and how animals are often victims alongside children in abusive situations. Marcus went with her, demonstrating his bond with the puppies and explaining how understanding animals' emotions had helped save Rex and Emma. Their presentations were powerful, often leaving audiences in tears. But more importantly, they led to several children coming forward about their own situations, and multiple cases of animal abuse being reported and investigated. 3 months after the puppies were born, they had their first major test. Robert had arranged for them to visit a veterans hospital where they would interact with patients dealing with PTSD. It was a critical step in their therapy dog evaluation. The night before, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat with Rex and the puppies, his hand on each one in turn. "You're going to do great," he told them. "You're going to help people who are hurting, just like we helped you." Hope crawled into his lap, as if sensing his anxiety. The little puppy, no longer so little at 3 months old, licked his face and settled against his chest with a contented sigh. The hospital visit exceeded everyone's expectations. Hope immediately gravitated toward a veteran who'd been reluctant to participate, her fearless curiosity drawing him out of his shell. Courage stationed himself next to a woman who was clearly anxious, his steady presence calming her. Miracle gently approached a man in a wheelchair who'd lost both legs, resting her head on his remaining knee with infinite gentleness. Star worked his magic with a group of younger veterans, his playful nature bringing out smiles and even laughter. Faith quietly bonded with a woman who'd been sitting alone, offering silent companionship. Lucky, true to his nature, managed to steal a tennis ball and started an impromptu game that had the entire room engaged. "I've never seen anything like it," the hospital's therapy program coordinator told Robert. "These puppies seem to instinctively know what each patient needs." Marcus and Emma beamed with pride, but they weren't surprised. They'd known from the beginning that these puppies were special, that their traumatic start had given them an empathy that couldn't be taught. As they prepared to leave, one veteran, a gruff older man who'd barely spoken during the visit, called out to them. "Wait," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "That little one, Hope. She reminded me that being scared doesn't mean you can't move forward. I haven't left my room in weeks, but she just walked right up to me like I was worth knowing. Could she come back?" Robert smiled. "She'll be back next week, and every week after that as part of her training." The man nodded, then looked at Marcus and Emma. "You kids saved these dogs?" "We all saved each other," Emma replied, echoing what Marcus had said weeks earlier. As they loaded the tired puppies into Dr. Chen's van for the ride home, Henry reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that rainy morning at the bus stop to this moment, watching his grandson and Emma carefully securing each puppy for the ride, ensuring Rex could see all her babies, life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. "Grandpa," Marcus said, interrupting his thoughts. "Rex wants to know if we can stop at the bus stop on the way home." Henry was about to ask why when he realized the date. It was exactly 6 months since they'd found Rex under that bench. "Of course," he said. They pulled up to the bus stop just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The bench where they'd found Rex looked the same, but everything else had changed. Marcus and Emma led Rex and her puppies to the spot where it all began. Rex sniffed around the bench, then sat down, not under it in fear as she had 6 months ago, but beside it, proud and confident. Her puppies gathered around her, and she looked up at the humans who'd saved her with what could only be described as gratitude. "This is where our story started," Emma said softly. "But it's not where it ends." Marcus nodded, his hand on Rex's head. "She says thank you, for hearing her when she was crying, for not walking away, for giving her a chance to be more than what those bad people tried to make her." Henry felt tears prick his eyes. This journey had begun with a child's compassion and an old man's reluctant kindness. It had grown to encompass a community, expose a criminal network, reunite a family, and create a pathway for healing that would extend far beyond their small circle. The bus stop had become a place of pilgrimage for them, a reminder of how a single moment of compassion could change everything. As they stood there that evening, watching Rex with her puppies, none of them knew that their greatest challenge was still ahead. It started with a phone call 3 days later. Detective Park's voice was tense when Henry answered. "We have a problem. Victor's lawyer has filed an appeal. He's claiming that Emma was legally adopted by him, that there are documents proving it. If he wins, he could get a reduced sentence or even get custody rights restored." Henry felt his blood run cold. "That's impossible. He kidnapped her." "We know that, but he's produced paperwork that looks legitimate, forged obviously, but good enough to cause problems. Emma might have to testify in person this time. When they broke the news to Emma, she went pale but didn't cry. She'd grown so much stronger over the past months, but this news shook her to her core. "I can't see him again," she whispered. "I can't." Dr. Chen held her niece close. "You won't be alone. We'll all be there with you." Marcus, who'd been playing with the puppies, suddenly stood up. "Rex wants to help. She says she'll go with Emma to court. She'll protect her." It seemed like an impossible idea, but Detective Park surprised them by considering it. Actually, having Rex there might help. She's evidence of Victor's cruelty, and her presence might give Emma strength. Let me talk to the prosecutor. The next few weeks were tense with preparation. Emma worked with her therapist daily, practicing what she would say, how she would stay calm. Marcus and the puppies seemed to sense the stress, staying close to Emma whenever she visited. During this time, something extraordinary happened with the puppies' training. Robert had been working with them on advanced therapy techniques when he noticed something unusual. The puppies seemed to be developing specialized skills that matched perfectly with specific types of trauma. Hope had an uncanny ability to detect anxiety attacks before they happened, positioning herself against people's legs to provide grounding pressure. Courage would place himself between perceived threats and anxious individuals, creating a safe barrier. Miracle seemed to sense physical pain and would gently rest against affected areas, providing warmth and comfort. Star had developed a technique of interrupting negative thought spirals by gently pawing at people and offering toys, redirecting their attention. Faith would mirror breathing patterns, naturally teaching anxious people to slow their breathing. Lucky, despite his playful nature, could detect depression and would perform small antics to elicit smiles without being overwhelming. "These aren't just therapy dogs in training," Robert told them in amazement. "They're developing into specialized emotional support specialists. I've never seen anything like it in 30 years of training." Marcus wasn't surprised. They learned from Rex. She survived by understanding emotions, by knowing what people needed. She taught her puppies the same thing. The day of the appeal hearing arrived too quickly. The courthouse was packed with media, victim advocates, and concerned citizens who'd followed the story. Victor's lawyer had painted him as a misunderstood man who'd tried to provide a home for an orphaned child, claiming all the abuse allegations were exaggerated or fabricated. Emma entered the courthouse holding Dr. Chen's hand with Marcus on her other side. Rex walked beside them, wearing her therapy dog vest that Robert had specially made for her. The puppies had to stay home, but Marcus said they were sending their love and courage. The moment Emma saw Victor in the courtroom, she froze. He looked different, thinner, older, but his eyes were the same cold, calculating eyes that had terrified her for 2 years. Rex immediately pressed against Emma's legs, grounding her, while Marcus squeezed her hand. "You can do this," Marcus whispered. "Rex and I are right here." Emma's testimony was powerful. She spoke clearly about the abuse, the dog fighting, the way Victor had used her to train bait dogs because animals trusted children. She described the night her parents died, how Victor had been there, how he'd taken her before anyone could arrive. "He said if I ever told anyone, he'd hurt more people I cared about," Emma said, her voice steady despite her tears. "He said he owned me, just like he owned the dogs." Victor's lawyer tried to discredit her, suggesting she was confused, traumatized, making up stories. But Emma held firm, her hand on Rex's head for strength. Then came the moment that changed everything. The prosecutor asked Emma to describe a specific incident that would prove Victor's cruelty. Emma looked at Rex, who was watching Victor with wary eyes. The worst night was when Rex refused to fight. She was pregnant, and Victor wanted to use her as bait one last time before she had puppies. She wouldn't do it. She just lay down and wouldn't move, no matter how much they hurt her. Emma's voice broke. Victor was so angry, he put that collar on her, the one that was too tight, and said she could wear it until she learned to obey. He made me watch while he... She couldn't continue, sobbing into Dr. Chen's shoulder. Rex stood up, facing Victor, and did something no one expected. She began to growl, low and threatening, her lips pulled back to show her teeth. This gentle dog, who'd never shown aggression since her rescue, was warning Victor to stay away from Emma. The judge called for order, but the impact was clear. Rex's reaction to Victor, combined with Emma's testimony, painted a clear picture of the truth. But Victor's lawyer had one more card to play. "Your Honor, we'd like to present a witness who can testify to Mr. Reeves's character and his relationship with Emma." The courtroom doors opened and a woman walked in. She was thin, nervous-looking, with graying hair and tired eyes. Emma gasped. "Mrs. Monica," she whispered. The woman was Monica Reeves, Victor's sister, who'd lived in the same building but had never intervened. Everyone expected her to defend her brother, but when she took the stand, her first words shocked everyone. "My brother is a monster," she said quietly, "and I'm here to tell the truth about what he did to that little girl and those poor dogs." Monica's testimony was devastating. She described years of watching Victor's cruelty, too afraid to intervene because he'd threatened her own children. She told about the night Emma's parents died, how Victor had bragged about causing the accident. She had photos she'd secretly taken of the dog fighting operation, evidence she'd been too scared to share before. "Why come forward now?" the prosecutor asked. Monica looked at Emma. "Because that little girl was braver than I ever was. She saved that dog, knowing what Victor would do if he caught her. If a child could be that brave, I had to find my courage too." The judge's decision was swift and decisive. Not only was Victor's appeal denied, but additional charges were filed based on Monica's testimony. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. As they left the courthouse, Emma hugged Rex tightly. "We did it, girl. We're really free now." The media surrounded them, wanting statements, but they pushed through to where Dr. Chen's van waited. As they drove away, Marcus said something that made everyone pause. "Rex says it's time." "Time for what?" Henry asked. "Time for the puppies to start their real work. They're ready to help others the way we helped Rex." The next months were bittersweet as they prepared for the puppies to go to their permanent therapy assignments. Each had been matched with specific facilities or programs where their unique skills would be most valuable. Hope was assigned to a children's hospital, where her brave, curious nature would help young patients facing scary medical procedures. The little girl who'd be her primary handler was a cancer patient who'd been too afraid to leave her room until Hope walked in and simply refused to be intimidated by the medical equipment. Courage was matched with a veterans program specializing in PTSD treatment. His protective nature and steady presence were exactly what soldiers struggling with hypervigilance needed. His handler would be a young Marine who'd lost his entire unit in an ambush and hadn't been able to trust anyone since. Miracle found her calling at a rehabilitation center for abuse survivors. Her gentle understanding and own history of trauma made her perfect for people who'd experienced violence. She was paired with a counselor who specialized in helping domestic violence survivors. Star was placed with a pediatric therapy program for children with autism and sensory processing disorders. His intuitive understanding of when to be playful and when to be calm made him ideal for children who struggled with social cues. Faith went to a hospice program where her quiet, comforting presence would help people in their final days. Her ability to mirror breathing and provide silent companionship was exactly what was needed in those profound moments. Lucky, surprisingly, was selected for a program working with juvenile offenders. His playful nature combined with his intuitive understanding of pain beneath anger made him perfect for reaching kids who'd built walls around their hearts. The day of separation was emotional. They held a ceremony in the park where the puppies had learned to walk on leashes, where they'd played their first games of fetch. The entire neighborhood came to say goodbye. Each puppy's new handler came to meet them, and the matches were clearly perfect. But that didn't make saying goodbye any easier. "Will we see them again?" Marcus asked, tears streaming down his face as he hugged each puppy goodbye. "We'll visit," Henry promised, "and they'll always be family." Rex seemed to understand what was happening. She went to each of her puppies, licking their faces, nuzzling them one last time. When Hope, the last to leave, was carried to her new handler's car, Rex let out a long, mournful howl that expressed what they all felt. But as the weeks passed, the updates they received showed that the puppies were thriving in their new roles. Photos and videos arrived showing Hope helping a child through chemotherapy, Courage sleeping beside a veteran who'd had his first nightmare-free night in years, Miracle sitting with a woman as she testified against her abuser. Emma created a scrapbook documenting each puppy's journey and the lives they were changing. "They're doing what they were meant to do," she said, showing a photo of Star helping a non-verbal child communicate through play. They're healing the world, one person at a time. Rex, meanwhile, had found her own calling. Robert had certified her as a therapy dog, and she began visiting schools with Marcus and Emma, teaching children about animal welfare and the importance of kindness. Her scars told her story more powerfully than words ever could. One particularly meaningful visit was to Marcus's school, where he'd been struggling since his mother's death. His classmates had thought he was weird for claiming to understand animals, but when they saw Rex respond to his silent cues, when they heard the story of rescue and redemption, everything changed. Marcus has a gift, his teacher, Mrs. Brennan, told Henry afterward. The way he connects with that dog, the empathy he shows, it's extraordinary. The principal approached them with an idea. Would you consider letting Marcus and Rex be part of our new emotional support program? Some of our students are dealing with trauma, and having Rex here, with Marcus to help them understand her, could make a real difference. It was perfect. 3 days a week, Marcus and Rex would spend time at school, working with students who were struggling. Rex seemed to know exactly which children needed her most, gravitating toward the quiet ones, the angry ones, the sad ones. One boy, Timothy, hadn't spoken since witnessing his father's death in an accident. But when Rex rested her head on his lap, when Marcus explained that Rex understood about losing someone you love, Timothy whispered his first words in months. She's soft. Emma, inspired by the puppy's success, started a blog called From Bait to Great, documenting their journey and providing resources for other rescue animals and their families. The blog went viral, leading to speaking engagements and even a book deal, with all proceeds going to animal rescue organizations. 6 months after the puppies had gone to their new homes, they organized a reunion. All 6 puppies, now fully grown and certified therapy dogs, returned to the park with their handlers and the people they'd been helping. The reunion was magical. The puppies recognized each other immediately, playing like they'd never been apart. But more meaningful were the stories their handlers shared. Hope's handler, the mother of the little girl with cancer, cried as she explained how Hope had given her daughter the courage to face treatment. She calls Hope her brave buddy. She says if Hope can be brave, so can she. The Marine working with Courage spoke about how the dog had helped him leave his apartment for the first time in months. He makes me feel safe, like someone's got my 6 again. Miracle's handler from the abuse shelter shared how one woman had been ready to return to her abuser until Miracle stayed by her side during a panic attack, showing her that gentleness and love were possible. The stories went on, each one a testament to the ripple effect of that morning at the bus stop when Marcus had heard Rex crying and refused to walk away. As the sun set on the reunion, they all sat in a circle, humans and dogs together. Rex was in the center with Marcus and Emma, the matriarch surrounded by her children and the extended family they had created. None of this would have happened if you hadn't stopped that morning, Doctor. Chen told Henry. One moment of kindness changed so many lives. Henry looked at his grandson, who was laughing as Lucky performed his latest trick, at Emma, who was confidently directing a group photo, at Rex, who was watching her puppies with obvious pride. Marcus always says we all saved each other, Henry replied. I'm starting to think he was right. A year passed. The anniversary of finding Rex was marked by the announcement that their story would be made into a documentary to raise awareness about animal abuse and the healing power of the human-animal bond. The film crew followed them for months, capturing daily life and the ongoing impact of the puppy's work. During filming, they received unexpected news. Monica Reeves, Victor's sister who had testified against him, had started a foundation for children affected by crime. She wanted Emma to be its first beneficiary, providing a full college fund and ongoing support. I can't undo what my brother did, Monica said when she visited, but I can try to make sure Emma and other children like her have the futures they deserve. Emma, now thriving in school and therapy, had begun talking about becoming a veterinarian like her father and aunt. I want to help animals who've been hurt like Rex was, and maybe find other kids who need help too. Marcus, meanwhile, had been identified by his school as profoundly gifted, particularly in emotional intelligence and interspecies communication. A university research program wanted to study his abilities, not to exploit them, but to understand how they might help others develop stronger bonds with animals. You could help teach other people how to listen to animals, the lead researcher explained. Imagine how many animals could be helped if more people understood them the way you do. But perhaps the most surprising development came when Carl, the bus driver, who'd first warned them about Victor's men, revealed his own secret. He'd been documenting their story from the beginning, taking photos and notes, planning to write about it. Not for money, he assured them quickly. I wanted to make sure the story was told right. About how ordinary people doing the right thing can change everything. His manuscript, when they read it, was beautiful. It captured not just the dramatic moments, but the quiet ones. Marcus reading to Rex during her recovery. Emma slowly learning to trust again. Henry's transformation from reluctant guardian to fierce protector. They agreed to let Carl publish it, with proceeds going to their newly established Rex Foundation, which would provide medical care for abused animals and support for children who'd witnessed animal cruelty. The book launch was held at the bus stop where it all began. The mayor attended, declaring it Rex Day in the city. The bench where Rex had hidden was decorated with a small plaque. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the world. Marcus spoke at the event, his voice clear and strong, despite his young age. Rex taught us that even when bad things happen, even when people are cruel, love is stronger. Every one of her puppies is out there right now, helping someone who's hurting. That's what happens when you choose kindness. It spreads. Emma added, I was trapped in darkness for 2 years. Rex and this family showed me the light again. Now I want to be that light for others. The documentary premiered 6 months later to critical acclaim. It sparked a national conversation about the connection between animal abuse and child abuse, leading to new legislation requiring closer cooperation between animal welfare and child protection services. Emma's Law, as it became known, mandated that reports of animal abuse trigger welfare checks for children in the same household, and vice versa. It would save countless children and animals from suffering in silence. The puppies, now adult dogs, had become famous in their own right. Hope had helped dozens of children through medical treatments. Courage had prevented 3 suicide attempts by veterans he was working with, somehow knowing when they were in crisis. Miracle had given testimony comfort to over 50 abuse survivors in court. Star had helped numerous autistic children find ways to communicate and connect. Faith had brought peace to hundreds in their final moments. Lucky had reached kids everyone else had given up on, showing them they were worth loving. Each dog's story was a chapter in the larger narrative of healing and hope that had begun with Rex. On the 2nd anniversary of Rex's rescue, they received a letter that brought everything full circle. It was from a woman in another state who'd seen the documentary. My daughter has been mute since witnessing her father hurt our dog, the letter read. The dog died, and my daughter hasn't spoken since. We've tried everything. After seeing your story, she finally told me, by writing, that she wants to help animals like Marcus does. She says if that boy could save Rex, maybe she can save others too. You've given us hope. They invited the woman and her daughter, Lily, to visit. When Lily met Rex, she didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Rex went straight to her, sitting quietly by her side, understanding without words what the girl needed. Marcus sat with Lily for hours, not pushing her to talk, just showing her how he communicated with Rex through touch and presence. On the 3rd day of their visit, Lily whispered to Rex, "I'm sorry I couldn't save Buddy." It was her first words in over a year. Her mother sobbed with relief and joy. Rex says Buddy knows you loved him, Marcus told Lily gently, and he's proud of you for being brave enough to speak again. They stayed in touch with Lily and her mother. Lily began working with a local rescue organization, finding her voice again through helping animals who'd been silenced by abuse. As time passed, the ripples continued spreading. The Rex Foundation grew, helping hundreds of animals, and children Marcus and Emma became youth ambassadors for animal welfare, speaking at conferences and schools across the country. Henry, who thought his life was winding down when he'd taken custody of Marcus, found new purpose in managing the foundation and telling their story to anyone who would listen. "I was just an old man waiting at a bus stop," he'd say, "but my grandson taught me that it's never too late to make a difference." Rex lived to the remarkable age of 15, far longer than anyone expected given her traumatic start. Her final years were peaceful, filled with love, and the knowledge that her puppies were changing the world. When she finally passed, peacefully in her sleep with Marcus and Emma by her side, the entire city mourned. Her funeral was attended by hundreds, all the people whose lives she'd touched, directly or indirectly. Each of her puppies, now senior dogs themselves, came to say goodbye. They surrounded their mother one last time, a circle of love that had begun with abandonment and abuse but ended with dignity and grace. Marcus, now 17, spoke at her memorial. Rex taught us that broken doesn't mean worthless, scared doesn't mean weak, different doesn't mean less than. She showed us that love can heal wounds that seem impossible to heal. Every life she touched, every person her puppies helped, every animal saved because of her story. That's her legacy. Emma, now in college studying veterinary medicine, added, "Rex gave me my life back. She showed me that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope, always someone who will hear you crying and refuse to walk away." The memorial concluded with the unveiling of a statue at the bus stop, a bronze sculpture of Rex sitting proud and strong, with a small boy's hand on her head. The inscription read, "In memory of Rex and all the silent souls who need someone to hear their cry. May we always have the courage to listen." Years later, when people asked Marcus how he'd known to stop that mourning, how he'd heard Rex when no one else did, he would always give the same answer. She wasn't just crying with her voice. She was crying with her heart. And sometimes, if we're quiet enough, if we care enough, we can hear hearts crying all around us. The question isn't whether we can hear them, it's whether we choose to listen. The foundation established a network of Rex stops, safe places marked with her image where children or animals in distress could find help. These stops were located at schools, libraries, community centers, and yes, bus stops throughout the city and eventually the nation. Marcus went on to become an animal behaviorist, developing groundbreaking communication techniques that helped thousands of traumatized animals. But he never forgot that it all started with a boy who heard a dog crying and refused to leave her behind. Emma became a veterinarian, specializing in rehabilitation of fighting dogs, turning her trauma into triumph. She opened the Rex Memorial Clinic, where no animal was turned away for inability to pay. Henry lived to see his great-grandchildren, Marcus's twins, who inherited their father's gift with animals. He would tell them the story of Rex over and over, always ending with the same words. One moment of kindness can change the world. Never walk past someone who needs help. The puppies all lived long, fulfilling lives, continuing their therapy work until the end. Hope's final act was comforting a child about to undergo the same surgery she'd helped dozens through. Courage stayed with his Marine until the very end, both passing within days of each other, neither wanting to leave the other alone. Miracle testified in court one last time at age 14, her presence helping convict an abuser who terrorized his family for years. Star helped a non-verbal child speak his first words at age 12. Good dog. Faith brought peace to over 1,000 people in their final moments. Lucky reformed 63 juvenile offenders, many of whom went on to work in animal welfare. Each dog's passing was mourned by hundreds whose lives they had changed. But their legacy lived on in the countless therapy dogs trained using the methods developed with them, in the laws changed because of their story, in the lives saved because someone remembered to listen for silent cries for help. The documentary about their story won an Academy Award. In his acceptance speech, the director said, "This isn't just a story about a dog and a boy. It's about the power of compassion to transform trauma into triumph, pain into purpose. It's about the reminder that in our darkest moments, someone might be listening, ready to help if we're brave enough to cry out." Marcus and Emma established the International Rex Day, observed annually on the date Marcus first heard her crying. On this day, people worldwide perform acts of kindness for animals and children in need, sharing their stories with the hashtag #HearTheirCry. Schools began teaching the Rex curriculum, using their story to teach empathy, responsibility, and the interconnection between human and animal welfare. Children learned that protecting animals often meant protecting children, and vice versa. The bus stop became a pilgrimage site for people whose lives had been touched by the story. They would leave flowers, photos of animals they had rescued, letters thanking Rex for inspiring them to act. The city eventually built a small park around it, called Rex's Rest, where people and animals could find peace and safety. Marcus often returned to that spot, even as an adult, especially when he needed to make difficult decisions. He would sit on the bench, close his eyes, and remember that morning when he was 5, when he heard a dog crying and changed the world. Every day, he would tell people, we pass by suffering. Sometimes it's hidden under benches, sometimes it's in plain sight. Rex taught us that we have a choice. We can keep walking, or we can stop and help. That choice defines who we are. Emma would add, and sometimes the one crying for help might be a child who's learned to be silent, or an animal who's given up hope. That's why we have to listen with more than our ears. We have to listen with our hearts. The Rex Foundation grew into an international organization, saving thousands of animals and children from abuse. Every rescue was documented, creating a vast network of hope and healing that spanned the globe. But perhaps the most powerful legacy was the simple one, the reminder that one person, even a small child, could make a difference. That choosing kindness over convenience, compassion over comfort, could create ripples that would spread far beyond what anyone could imagine. In his final interview, at age 93, Henry was asked what he would tell his younger self, standing at that bus stop, hesitating about helping an injured dog. I would say that every great story begins with someone saying yes to compassion, he replied. That morning, I thought I was just helping my grandson rescue a dog. I didn't know I was rescuing my own heart, saving a kidnapped child, and starting a movement that would change countless lives. I would tell myself that the interruptions to our plans are often the most important moments of our lives. He paused, looking at the photo on his wall, the one from the reunion, showing Rex surrounded by her puppies, Marcus and Emma, and all the people whose lives had been changed. And I would say that love multiplies. We saved one dog, and she gave us 6 puppies. Those 6 helped thousands. Those thousands inspired millions, all because a 5-year-old boy heard crying and wouldn't walk away. Henry passed peacefully a week after that interview, holding a photo of Rex and surrounded by family. Marcus, Emma, their children, and therapy dogs descended from Rex's line. His last words were, "Listen for the crying, always listen." The story of Rex became required reading in many schools, a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear worn collars and cry under bus stop benches, waiting for someone with enough heart to hear them. Marcus and Emma continued the work, establishing rec centers worldwide where abused animals and traumatized children could heal together. They proved repeatedly that the bond between hurting souls could create healing that traditional therapy alone couldn't achieve. Every center had the same inscription at its entrance: "In memory of Rex, who taught us that the smallest act of kindness can echo through eternity. May we always have ears to hear, hearts to care, and courage to act." The scientific community studied the phenomenon of Marcus's gift, eventually identifying genetic markers associated with enhanced interspecies empathy. But Marcus always insisted that while some people might be naturally gifted, everyone could learn to listen better, to pay attention to the silent suffering around them. "It's not about being special," he would say. "It's about choosing to care." Rex didn't need someone with supernatural powers to save her. She needed someone who wouldn't walk away. As the years turned into decades, the story passed into legend, but its impact remained real and measurable. Laws protecting animals and children bore Rex's influence. Therapy dog programs worldwide used techniques developed with her puppies. Countless people traced their decision to help others back to hearing this story. Children who'd never met Rex or Marcus would play Rex in the Rescue, pretending to save animals and help kids in trouble. Parents would invoke Rex's story when teaching about kindness and courage. "Remember Rex" became shorthand for choosing compassion even when it's inconvenient. The bus stop bench was eventually moved to a museum, but a replica remained in Rex's rest park. Every morning, people would sit there for a moment, some praying, some reflecting, all remembering that this ordinary place had been the setting for something extraordinary. On the 50th anniversary of Rex's rescue, the city held a massive celebration. Thousands of therapy dogs descended from Rex's line, gathered with their handlers. Marcus, now a grandfather himself, spoke to the crowd. 50 years ago, I was just a scared little boy who'd lost his mother. I heard a dog crying and thought I was saving her. But she saved me. She saved Emma. She saved everyone her puppies would go on to help. She saved people who haven't even been born yet, who will someday be comforted by a therapy dog trained in methods we developed with her." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. Rex showed us that broken beings don't need to stay broken. That love can heal wounds that seem unhealable. That one moment of choosing kindness over indifference can ripple out forever. Emma, standing beside him with her own grandchildren, added, "Every person here has a story of how Rex's legacy touched them. Maybe it was a therapy dog that helped you through trauma. Maybe it was a law that protected you or someone you love. Maybe it was simply hearing this story and deciding to help someone in need." She looked out at the sea of faces, human and canine alike. Rex can't be here in body, but she's here in every act of kindness, every rescued animal, every protected child. She's here in the choice we make every day to listen for cries for help and to answer them. The celebration concluded with a moment of silence, not for mourning, but for listening. Thousands of people stood quietly, opening their hearts to hear who might be crying for help, who might need their compassion. And in that silence, some swore they could hear it, a whisper on the wind, a grateful sigh, the ghost of a tail wagging. Rex's spirit, still teaching, still inspiring, still reminding everyone that love is stronger than cruelty, hope stronger than despair, and kindness stronger than indifference. As people dispersed, returning to their lives across the world, they carried with them the same message Marcus had carried for 50 years. Listen for the crying. Have the courage to stop. Choose kindness even when it's hard, because you never know when your simple act of compassion might change the world. The story ends where it began, at a bus stop, with someone crying for help. But now, because of Rex, because of Marcus, because of everyone who'd been touched by their story, those cries were more likely to be heard, more likely to be answered, more likely to lead to rescue, redemption, and hope. And somewhere, in animal shelters and abuse situations around the world, other souls were crying out, waiting for their Marcus, their Henry, their Emma, waiting for someone to hear them, to refuse to walk away, to choose love over indifference. The legacy of Rex lived on, not in monuments or museums, but in every person who remembered her story and chose to act with compassion, in every child who stood up to cruelty, in every adult who inconvenienced themselves to help, in every moment when someone heard crying and refused to walk away. Because that's what Rex taught us all, that heroes aren't people with special powers or unlimited resources. Heroes are ordinary people who hear someone crying and choose to help, who see suffering and refuse to ignore it, who understand that their small act of kindness might be the beginning of something extraordinary. The final words of the documentary that told their story became a rallying cry for generations. Somewhere, right now, someone is crying for help. They might be human or animal, young or old, near or far. The question isn't whether you can help them all. You can't. The question is whether you'll help the one in front of you, the one whose cry you can hear, the one whose life you can change. Will you be their Marcus? Will you be their hope? And across the world, inspired by a boy, a dog, and a bus stop, more and more people answered, yes. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness, if it inspired you to listen for those crying for help, please like this video, share it with others who need to hear this message, and comment below with your own stories of rescue and redemption. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that remind us of the good in humanity and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Remember, you might be someone's only hope. Listen for their cry.